Hello and welcome to Fandom Friday, where a member of the Rogers Public Library staff shows you something that they are a fan of. I'm Evan Day, a young adult librarian, and today I'm going to show you Usagi Yojimbo comics. That's right. Usagi Yojimbo, that is written and drawn by Stan Sakai, has been for 30 years. You may have heard about this character before if you've ever watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's actually an original character from his own comics that, well, Stan Sakai was friends with Peter Laird, who co-created the Turtles, and he let them show up in several of his comics and cartoons. So, if you've never seen Usagi Yojimbo, or only know him from the Ninja Turtle comics or cartoons, you're in for a treat. It is a grand comic, 30 years of unique storytelling, very much of a Wild West variety. Wild West insofar as it is 17th century Japan, the feudal era, and it follows the story of Miyamoto Usagi, based on, loosely, the real-life samurai Miyamoto Musashi, who travels as a wandering Ronin, a masterless samurai. He lost his master years ago in a war and must travel from place to place looking for work, looking for adventure, and he finds it. Along the way, he meets a whole cast of wonderful characters. Jin, the gold-loving bounty hunter, who secretly is quite the softie. Kitsune, the masterful thief who always manages to get the best of Usagi at the very end. Tomei, based on a real-life samurai who might be a love interest but is bound to a very young noble lord who she must protect. There's, of course, also Jay, the monster of a sorts, a wandering samurai with a spear who seems like he walked off a horror movie more than a Japanese feudal tale. Lots of different characters like that show up throughout the series. The cool thing about Usagi Yojimbo comics is that, well, they're not just one type of story. There's grand samurai action adventure, sure, lots of sword fights and Usagi fighting people, but there's also mysteries, ghost stories, comedy tales, tragic ones, whatever you get. And it creates a situation where you can pick up pretty much any volume of Usagi Yojimbo, dive right in, and even if you don't know the full backstory, you can pretty much understand things. It's a very accessible comic. I really recommend it, teenagers, adults. I never get tired of this comic, to be perfectly honest. Of course, the characters are all animals. Usagi is a rabbit. Jin, the bounty hunter, is a rhinoceros. Kitsune, of course, is a fox. It doesn't matter. It's a very interesting visual device that makes the characters look neat. But that's never the point. They are real characters, flesh and blood, who change and grow and are just characters that you will fall in love with. If I had to pick a couple of stories that I find interesting, first off, I'll say all of them are good. Grasscutter is a standout. It's a big epic tale about a war that breaks out over a particular legendary sword. It includes Usagi and Jin, the Neko Ninja, or the Cat Ninja, lots of different characters fighting over this one sword, as well as a great use of Jay, who I mentioned earlier, who is at his most terrifying. I also want to mention that this series, well, it has a great deal of Japanese history and mythology. It'll teach you something. You will accidentally get an education learning while you read these books. One example is actually in this volume, which includes a story in which Usagi visits the lady samurai Tomei and experiences a Japanese tea ceremony that is panel by panel recreated without words in exact detail. And many of the volumes actually include a little historical note section at the end to tell you about that. Well, I hope I've convinced you to at least give these a try if you have any interest at all. Next week, we'll learn from another staff member what they're a fan of. So, this is Evan Day, signing off.